Imagine you step into a home where the floors shine, the counters are empty, the towels hang like they have never been touched. You feel something before you think, a faint exhale in your chest. Why does order in someone else's space reach so quickly into your nervous system? The psychology of a clean house is not about soap. It is about what the mind is trying to protect. In the right light, a room is a private diary, written in silence, line by line. For some people, cleaning is a neutral chore. For others, it is a language of self-regulation, a way to translate messy emotion into visible symmetry. Psychologists call this an externalization strategy. When the inner world feels complex, uncertain, or uncontrollable, the outer world becomes a canvas where control can be reclaimed. A wiped sink is a solved problem. The brain rewards completed loops with a tiny dose of relief, mediated by dopamine and the calming of threat circuitry. That is why just 10 minutes of tidying can suddenly become 2 hours. The reward is not the clean counter, it is the feeling of closure. But clean homes are not all created by the same motive. One pathway is temperament. In the Big Five model of personality, conscientiousness predicts orderliness and a preference for structure. Highly conscientious people often experience clutter as cognitive noise. Their attention is easily pulled by unfinished tasks and visual irregularities. Research on need for cognitive closure helps explain this. Some minds are simply more uncomfortable with ambiguity, and physical disorder can register as ambiguity made visible. When those individuals clean, they are not trying to impress anyone. They are reducing mental load. Another pathway is learned association. Many of us were trained, subtly or explicitly, to link cleanliness with goodness. Developmental psychologists note that children absorb moral meanings from household routines. What clean up can quietly become, we are the kind of people who do things properly. Over time, cleanliness becomes part of identity, and identity is guarded like a border. In adulthood, a spotless home can function as a moral signal to the self: I am responsible. I am safe. I am not falling apart. This is why criticism about someone's home can feel personal. It is received as criticism of character. There is also the social dimension, the gaze of the imagined other. Many people mentally rehearse being seen. Sociologists call this impression management. Clinicians see it as a form of anticipatory shame avoidance. If your early environment taught you that mistakes invite ridicule, a clean house can become armor. It reduces the number of possible judgments. The irony is that this armor is built in solitude. You may be alone at midnight, wiping fingerprints from a mirror, but psychologically, you are not alone. You are in a room full of hypothetical witnesses. Then there is anxiety. A clean environment can soothe an anxious brain by increasing predictability. Yet anxiety can also hijack cleaning and turn it into compulsion. The difference is subtle. Soothing cleaning ends with satisfaction. Anxiety-driven cleaning ends with temporary relief and a quick return of doubt. This is where clinical concepts like obsessive, compulsive tendencies enter the picture. Even in milder, everyday forms, the mind begins to treat disorder as danger, not inconvenience. A crumb is not just a crumb, it is evidence that something is slipping. In that state, cleaning is less like caring for a home and more like negotiating with an invisible threat. Notice how many of these motives orbit the same core need: safety. Safety from chaos, from judgment, from uncertainty, from the feeling that life is not held together. The clean house is a small universe where rules work. You do X and Y happens. You scrub and the stain disappears. Real life rarely offers that kind of reliable cause and effect. Yet there is one more psychological layer that often hides in plain sight: the emotional meaning of clean itself. In many cultures, cleanliness is tied to purity and purity is tied to belonging. Discuss sensitivity, a trait with biological roots, can amplify this. People with higher disgust sensitivity experience stronger reactions to contamination cues, even symbolic ones. Interestingly, studies have found that physical cleansing can reduce feelings of guilt, as if the body's rituals can wash the mind. When someone keeps an immaculate home, they may be pursuing not just order, but a sense of moral and emotional purification. The question is this: when your eyes land on a pile of dishes or a chair draped in clothes, what does your mind decide it means? Not, what is it, but what is it saying? Cognitive psychologists call these instant interpretation schemas, compressed stories built from repeated experience. In one person, clutter means unfinished, mildly irritating. In another, it means unsafe, lazy, or someone could walk in and see the truth. Cleaning then becomes a form of editing, altering the environment to rewrite the story. Notice the meaning. and you'll see why the same mess triggers different levels of urgency today. One common schema is competence. If your self-worth depends on being capable, disorder feels like evidence against you. Another schema is respect. A tidy space signals care, while clutter signals neglect. So cleaning becomes a way to prove love without speaking. A third is status. Some people were taught, directly or indirectly, that the home is a public-facing summe and every surface is graded. In therapy, I often ask clients to finish the sentence, "If my house is messy, then." The answer reveals the hidden rule driving the behavior. Name the rule, and the urge to scrub becomes legible again. In a classic set of studies by Zhang and Liljenquist, participants were asked to recall an ethically questionable act: lying, cheating, betraying a promise. Afterwards, they completed word fragments. Those in the moral threat condition were more likely to form words like dabesech and sop than neutral words, as if the mind drifted toward cleansing metaphors on its own. In a follow-up, some participants actually washed their hands. Strikingly, they then felt less motivated to engage in compensatory prosocial behavior, like volunteering time to help another person. It suggested that the body's ritual can substitute for repair, closing an emotional account. Other experiments show the arrow can point the opposite way. Cleanliness cues can shape judgment. In one line of research, participants sat at a desk that had been subtly cleaned, or one that had a faintly sticky, grimy feel. Those in the dirty condition reported stronger feelings of disgust and delivered harsher moral evaluations of ambiguous scenarios. The effect is not simply snobbery. It reflects how the brain's threat detection systems borrow signals from the senses. When the environment whispers contamination, the mind becomes less forgiving, more vigilant, and more eager to draw sharp boundaries. Even your politics can tilt slightly. To understand why some people clean constantly, look at the learning process, not the personality label. The sequence often begins with an internal trigger: tension before guests arrive, irritation after a disagreement, or a vague sense that something is off. The person cleans, and within minutes the body's arousal drops. That drop is powerful. In behavioral terms, the action is negatively reinforced. It removes an unpleasant state, making the action more likely next time. Over months, the brain stops asking whether cleaning is necessary. It simply reaches for the familiar lever that reliably lowers discomfort. Until one day, it doesn't. Consider Elena, a composite of several clients. She grew up with a mother who inspected the house the way some parents inspect report cards. Dust on the TV stand was met with a sigh that meant, "You're not trying." As an adult, Elena keeps her apartment pristine, but the behavior spikes after phone calls with family. She doesn't consciously think, "I must impress them." She feels a pressure behind the eyes, a tightness in the throat, and suddenly she is scrubbing grout with a toothbrush. The cleaning is not about dirt. It is about deserving warmth for herself too, tonight. Now consider Marcus, who lived for years in unpredictable conditions: doors slamming, arguments erupting, sleep interrupted. In those environments, the nervous system learns to scan for anomalies. In adulthood, Marcus finds that a cluttered kitchen keeps his shoulders lifted, as if he must stay ready. When the counters are cleared and the knives are aligned, his breathing slows. He calls it being organized. But it functions like a safety signal, telling his brain the territory is secure. The ritual also narrows attention, while wiping and arranging. Intrusive memories have less room to expand. For him, order is a nightlight always. Perfectionism adds another engine. Self-oriented perfectionism says, "I should do things flawlessly." While socially prescribed perfectionism whispers, "Others will reject me if I don't." A clean home can become the stage where those beliefs are proven over and over, with no audience required. Notice the all or nothing thinking: if the bed isn't made, the whole morning feels ruined. If the sink isn't empty, rest is not allowed. This is less about preference and more about permission. The person is trying to earn the right to relax by meeting an invisible standard that keeps moving, and house becomes a scoreboard of worth. Attachment patterns can also shape domestic order. If closeness once depended on anticipating another person's moods, you may become sensitive to small cues. A stray mug is not neutral. It is a possible complaint, a possible withdrawal of affection. Some adults respond by preempting disappointment. They keep the environment so managed that no one has a reason to be upset. Others use cleaning as caregiving, the way they wish they had been cared for. They fold towels with a tenderness that looks practical, but emotionally it is a rehearsal of safety. Hair, in this space, needs will be met predictably. There is a phenomenon clinicians call mental contamination, the sense of being dirty. Without any physical substance involved, it can follow humiliation, betrayal, or even an unwanted thought. In Rachman's work, some participants reported feeling contaminated after imagining a non-consensual kiss, and they showed increased washing behavior despite no actual contact. In everyday life, this can look like cleaning the bedroom after an argument or laundering clothes that feel wrong after a meeting. The logic is symbolic, not literal. Remove the residue of an experience. When someone cleans with unusual intensity, ask what event their body is trying to erase. Culture supplies its own instructions. Anthropologist Mary Douglas famously described dirt as matter out of place, meaning that what feels unclean is often what violates a category. Shoes on the couch, food in the bedroom, mail on the kitchen counter. Each breaks an unwritten map of where things belong. In some families, hosting is a sacred duty, so cleanliness becomes a form of respect toward guests and ancestors alike. In others, disorder signals creativity and freedom, so immaculate surfaces can be read as cold. These meanings are learned early, and they travel with us long after we stop noticing their origin. Sometimes the driver is sensory, not symbolic. People with high sensory sensitivity can experience clutter the way others experience loud noise, draining, agitating, impossible to ignore. For an autistic adult, a clear countertop may reduce overload and make meal preparation predictable. For someone with ADHD, a simplified space can serve as an external working memory, reducing the number of objects competing for attention. In these cases, tidiness is not about being good. It is about designing a livable world. Notice, too, the preference for certain textures and smells. The right cleanliness can feel like a reset button for the senses. How do clean house people make it look effortless? Often, they rely less on motivation and more on structure. Social psychologist Peter Gollwitzer showed that implementation intentions, simple if-then plans, dramatically increase follow-through. If I finish dinner, then I wash the pan before sitting. The plan turns a vague value into an automatic sequence. Many also reduce friction. They keep wipes where spills happen, baskets where clutter accumulates, hooks where coats are dropped. The environment becomes a silent coach. Over time, the brain starts to treat these micro-actions as part of identity, not as decisions requiring debate. The result is consistency, not intensity. Cleanliness can also be relational power, especially in shared homes. In family systems terms, one person may become the overfunctioner, managing the environment to prevent everyone else's discomfort. If you grew up around conflict, you may have learned that tension rises when things are disordered, so you clean to keep peace. But the pattern can backfire. Partners may feel corrected, children may feel monitored, and resentment grows beneath the polished surface. I've seen couples where the fight is never about crumbs, it is about whose standards set the emotional climate. The cleanest room, in that moment, is a negotiation table too. Here is the simplest way to tell whether cleanliness is serving someone, or whether someone is serving cleanliness. What happens inside their body when they stop. A healthy preference for order produces mild discomfort when things are untidy, then fades as attention moves on. A compulsive or shame-driven system produces escalation. Tension rises, thoughts narrow, and rest starts to feel undeserved. This is the psychological secret most people miss. The meaning of a clean house isn't primarily in the house, it's in the nervous system's response to pausing. When you can pause without panic, you are in choice. When you cannot, you are in a loop. That distinction matters because the goal is not to become messier or cleaner. The goal is to reclaim agency. Cleanliness can be care, artistry, and respect, but it becomes a problem when it is used as anesthesia. In clinical terms, we move from values-based behavior to emotion-driven behavior. You can keep high standards and still be free, you just need to understand the hidden contract your mind has written. If the house is perfect, then I am safe. The solution is not to argue with that contract intellectually. The solution is to renegotiate it gently through behavior. Action step 1: identify your rule. Take one area you clean most, kitchen counters, bathroom mirror, the bed, and write down the first completion sentence that appears. If this is messy, then ... Do not edit for politeness. Common answers include, I'm failing, I'm disgusting, people will judge me, I'll lose control, or I can't relax. This step is not journaling for self-expression. It is data collection. You are catching the belief that fuels the behavior. Once you can see the rule, you can test it. Action step 2. Locate the emotion underneath the urge. Before you clean, pause for 10 seconds and name what is present: anxiety, irritation, loneliness, shame, boredom, helplessness. Many people discover something unsettling. The urge to clean spikes not when the house is dirtiest, but when they feel emotionally exposed, after a difficult email, a tense conversation, or a day with too little control. You are mapping triggers. This is how you stop treating cleaning as the main event and start seeing it as a response. Action step 3. Practice. Choice. Point cleaning. Set a timer for 5 minutes. Clean only until the timer ends, then stop even if you could continue. This is not about productivity, it is a micro-exposure to incompletion. If stopping makes you restless, you have found the loop. If stopping feels fine, you are likely in the healthy preference zone. Either way, you are training the brain that you, not the urge, decide when a task ends. This is the same principle used in evidence-based approaches for compulsive rituals. Interrupt the automatic chain, then allow the nervous system to learn that nothing catastrophic follows. Action step 4. Do a single strategic mess experiment. Choose one low-stakes imperfection you will allow for 24 hours: a dish left to air dry, a blanket not folded, shoes not aligned. The point is not to live in chaos. It is to create a controlled violation of your internal rule. While the imperfection remains, track 2 things: your anxiety level from 0 to 10, and the predictions your mind makes. Most minds predict social rejection, internal collapse, or unbearable discomfort. Then observe what actually happens. Usually, the anxiety rises, peaks, and falls on its own. That drop is learning. You are teaching your brain that safety can exist without constant proof. Action step 5. Build closing rituals that are values-based, not fear-based. A closing ritual is a short sequence that tells your brain the day is done. Wipe the counter, set the coffee, clear the table, dim the lights. The key is to keep it bounded and repeatable, like brushing your teeth. When rituals are finite, they soothe. When they are open-ended, they feed perfectionism. Write your ritual as a list of 3 to 5 steps and define the finish line in advance. Then practice stopping at the finish line even if you notice small flaws. Your home will still be clean, but your mind will no longer be trapped in the never enough trance. Action step 6. Replace cleaning as coping with one alternative regulation tool. Your brain uses cleaning because it works fast, so you need something that works fast. Pick one: a 2-minute physiological size sequence, a brisk walk around the block, a short grounding practice where you name 5 things you see, or a single text to a safe person. The goal is to diversify your regulation portfolio. When cleaning is the only lever you have, you will pull it for every feeling. When you have multiple levers, cleaning can return to its rightful place: a practical act, not an emotional emergency. Action step 7. If you live with others, turn standards into agreements. Many clean house conflicts are really boundary conflicts. Instead of, "You never help," try, "I feel calmer when the sink is clear at night. Can we agree on a 10-minute reset together?" This shifts the dynamic from moral judgment to shared design. If you are the person with higher standards, your task is to separate discomfort from danger and preference from righteousness. If you are the person with lower standards, your task is to recognize that for some nervous systems, disorder is not neutral. The relationship improves when both sides stop treating their baseline as universal truth. Now for the deeper resolution: the cleanest home in the world cannot give you unconditional worth. It can give you beauty, function, and a sense of refuge, but it cannot complete the emotional task some people assign it, proving you are acceptable. The moment you stop using your house as evidence, you gain something surprising: more energy to care for it. You clean from devotion, not defense. You can host without performing. You can rest without auditing the room for errors. And you can tolerate the human fact that living creates traces. If you want to master your mind, don't start by fighting the behavior. Start by becoming curious about the state it protects. For the next week, try one experiment from the steps above and write down what you learned about your rule, your triggers, and your nervous system. Then, share your findings with people who are doing the same work. Join our community in the description, where we practice these psychological experiments together and turn self-awareness into real change. A clean house can be a sanctuary, but the real sanctuary is the moment you realize you can leave one cup in the sink and still be whole.